right, here we go. Episode 3, NBA trade deadline is done and over with. A lot of stuff to unpack today. Uh, Austin, what looks like the biggest trade today? There's a lot to unpack, but what's kind of the one that's sticking out to you the most here that you got?
Well, biggest news, it's been Kyle Lowry. Where is he going to end up if he's going to move? Looks like he didn't. The other big thing that was out there was Oladipo, where he was going to end up. Um, he ended up over in Miami. However, I think the biggest trade, though, I'd have to say is Rajon Rondo going to the Clippers in exchange for Lou Will. Rondo's leadership. He's won multiple titles. He's that glue guy. He will hold people responsible. I feel like that's been the Clippers' kind of downfall in the last couple of years is people not performing up to what they should have. Like not being held accountable by your teammates to Paul George, for instance, like not scoring, all that type of stuff. So I feel like him to the Clippers is probably, I think, the biggest one that's happened today.
Yeah, like you said, the kind of the biggest talk was where Kyle Lowry was going to end up, and it's kind of crazy. I'd watched the what was it, Raptors, and who'd they upset? They played somebody last night. Um, um, Let me find it quick. It's
They
not.
beat the Nuggets 135-111 last night.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, they upset the Nuggets, who are one of the top teams in the West. And leaving the arena, Lowry was kind of like throwing up peace signs, and it looked like he was kind of like choked up because he thought he was gone. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of days, I guess, what happened there and why he didn't end up leaving. Um, Whether it was another team or them not getting enough offers, or the offers they were getting, they weren't offered enough, whatever it might be. Otherwise, yeah, another big deal. Oladipo. Did you mention Oladipo?
Yep, him
Okay,
going to the Heat.
him going to the Heat. Yeah. Otherwise, Aaron Gordon to the Denver Nuggets. Orlando traded him. Um, kind of, kind of your guard, power forward mix kind of guy. Obviously a great dunker. He's been in the dunk contest for how many years?
Right.
Even though he's never won it, which is goes to show how that kind of stuff is kind of rigged sometimes. But definitely a good addition for Denver, given that again being one of the top teams in the West, trying to keep up with the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Jazz. So good move for the Nuggets there. And then
Yeah,
um,
that three-team trade. George Hill went to the 76ers, Austin Rivers to OKC, as well as Tony Bradley and 2 second-round picks, and then New York got Terrence Ferguson. So that was a pretty good deal, I feel like, for all three teams involved in that one. Just shuffling some talent around, maybe seeing if you can get a spark somewhere else. And then another big one was Boston added Evan Fournier from Orlando. He's gonna, I feel like, open up a lot of room for Jaylen Brown and some of the other guys on the squad who can definitely get some buckets. Where I feel like Boston adding him was a very, 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 very calculated move.
mhm. And it's kind of weird to see Boston towards the bottom of the league right now. I think
I know.
they're just sitting outside the bubble for making it to the playoffs, and they have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker. They just traded Theus, who was a good uh, paint guy for them. Um, but yeah, when you have those three all-star caliber guys on your team, and they're struggling like that, it's kind of crazy. And then even last night too. Uh, Griff for the Nets. Griffin didn't play. Durant didn't play. Kyrie didn't play, and Harden did not play. So they're four, kind of their dream team. None of them started, and they got absolutely crushed by the Jazz. I don't think they put up 100 points at one point. At one point, they only had like I think it was halfway through the third, and they only had like 60 points. I want to say. Um, Let me pull up the final for that one. Yeah, they lost 118 to 88, so they didn't even break 100 last night. So it's kind of interesting to see a glimpse of the Nets of what they used to be a year ago, and then what they are as the best offensive team in the league when all the guys are on the floor, and that'll be interesting to see too coming forward. And I'm sure in the closing week or two of the league of the regular season, you'll finally see all four guys on the floor together. Um, with the addition of Griffin, he hasn't been on the floor at the same time as all of them. Um, I know it's been rare to have three of them on the floor at once, if not all four. So it'll be kind of crazy to see once the playoffs come and all four are healthy and in full swing what that team is going to look like, and see if they're just going to run away within the playoffs, and even if the Lakers or Jazz even have a chance of slowing them down in the West. So.
Yeah, I don't think you got four guys who can ball. Um, you used to see the big three. That was kind of a thing that started with Boston, and then kind of you saw that transfer all over the league where these teams had three dominant guys. So you had the Warriors team who had five guys who could straight up all hoop. Look what happened. You ran into LeBron James and you lose. So I'm never counting out LeBron. I mean, definitely you can always. It looks like the Nets are going to get there, no problem. Um, I just don't. Was it the Nets or the Knicks? No, that's
Oh,
the Nets.
the Nets, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I just don't see them having any problem getting out of the East. But over in the West, now the Clippers got Rondo, the Jazz are a good squad. I feel like whoever comes out of the West definitely has a shot to beat those guys, just because of the fact that they're all superstars, and usually that doesn't really work on one team. So teams usually beat superstars when it's all superstars. Look, like you know what I mean, like 1980 Olympic United States team beat all the greatest players in the world because they came together as a team.
hmm Even back, I'm trying to remember, um, super team. It would have been the 2000 Redskins. They're the same thing on the football side. Put together a big super team, went out and got all the best free agents they could get, basically spends every penny, and then their season just didn't go anywhere. Because when you have especially in football, it's a little. I feel like it's a little easier to manage just because you have 22 guys you need to rely on. Whereas in basketball, you have five, and they play offense and defense. So, um, yeah, you have a lot more responsibility in basketball than football because in football you have more guys to lean on. But yeah, I guess yeah, out of the East, the Knicks are kind of the favorite right now. The Bucks and the 76ers are really going to be the only two teams, in my opinion. Maybe even the Heat now. They always throw their name in the hat. Jimmy Buckets always gets hot once the playoffs come around. Basically, he doesn't sit. He sits for like 2 minutes a game, and it just gives it his all every game. And I mean, they made it to the NBA Finals last year, so it's
And
not
they
like
just got Oladipo too.
yeah. So if anything, they're going to be a little bit better than they were last year. But also at the same time, with these super teams that are kind of forming, it'll be interesting to see how they react to that. But aside from that, that's kind of the major deals. There's a couple other deals in the NBA. Some smaller, some like bench guys for other bench guys and draft picks and stuff like that. Um, yeah, those are kind of the main ones that we wanted to touch on today for the NBA trade deadline. Uh, Tomorrow we'll probably talk a little bit more as some deals had to be finalized by this afternoon, but more will be made public as the evening goes on and into tomorrow. Um, so we'll definitely touch on those and just kind of touch on the ones we didn't talk about today tomorrow. So
Yeah, and hopefully some information comes out about that Lowry deal. why he ended up not being on the move,
Hmm.
knowing that there were teams that have offered for him.
Kind of sticking with the NBA as far as kind of like hot streaks and cold streaks. One, I mean, right off the bat, talking about the Bucks, they're on an 8-game win streak right now, 7 win streak out of the All Star break. Um, they they beat a close or they beat the Celtics last night. They only beat them by 2, but they were winning by double digits the whole game. The Celtics just went on a good run at the end. And looking at it, I'm pretty sure Giannis struggled too. He only put up, I want to say, let me look. So Giannis only put up 13 points and they won. So it's as frustrating as it is to see your best player on the team struggle in a night. If they still get the win, that's obviously good to see because then you wonder, okay, if he had a good night, they would have won by that much more. Um, so I just kind of being a Bucks fan, what do you kind of think about where they're at this year versus the past couple of years where they've been blowing out teams by 20, 30 points. They're always at the top of the East. They basically lock up the 1 seed with 2 weeks left. Do you think it's good for them this year to kind of fly under the radar a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. I always feel like, especially in basketball, where really only the top 4, 5, 6 teams are competitive in each conference, maybe even less than that on average, because of this super teams type of thing that's gone forward. Um, Playing nobody in the first round, being the number 1 seed, you might get relaxed, lazy, bad habits, thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. And then you're playing a real squad in the second round and you have trouble. Where being where the Bucks are at currently, middle of the pack, which is great for them, I think at this point. And especially like looking at last night, Middleton, 27 points, huge. Um, we talk about this off air quite a bit on how Giannis needs to work on his free throw shooting and just be a little more consistent in where us as a fan, we can count on those buckets when he's on the line. Um, it'd be nice to see if he could kind of do like what LeBron did to his game, where he went young in his career. He was the dunker, the inside guy, the paint guy. And then he turned to and learned how to shoot. And now he evolved into that playmaker, can do whatever he needs to do for the team. And if Giannis definitely learned how to be more consistent shooting from long range, he would be such a weapon that all the other guys on the team would just have that much more room because you'd have to give him that much more respect as a player. And then Lopez was 17, DiVincenzo with 17. Like everybody last night on the team balled out, and that's what it's going to take to win a championship. Your
Hmm.
bench guys are huge because your guys aren't playing all the minutes because it's a lot to run up and down the court.
Yeah, and like the the starting five for the Bucks is obviously a, a good starting five. DiVincenzo is the youngest guy of them, and even he's been in the league for a couple years now. And every year, it's nice to see him kind of develop a little more. You still see him make a couple mistakes now and then. Like I know last week we were watching a game. They ended up winning it, but they allowed a game-tying three right in the last seconds because he tried to go for a steal instead of trying to play defense. Which he's not the only guy that does that. There's other players across the whole league that do that. But it's just that's a younger guy mistake that happens. And then looking at the bench too, especially with Pat Connaughton, he's always reliable. Bobby Portis,
Yeah,
um,
he had 21
yeah, he had
last night
21 off
off
the
the
bench
bench.
last night, and then last night as well was PJ Tucker's debut for the Bucks. He's always a reliable forward. Good, very good 3-point shooter when he was at Houston. So um, again, just adds another dimension to that team where all these other teams are piling up into super teams, and the Bucks go out and they get Tucker to kind of add some firepower for themselves. So coming down the stretch here, it'll be good to see them all of them mesh together. And um, obvi- obviously, they should make a deep playoff run as they do just about every year. But it's just a matter of what's it going to take to get that next step to make it to the finals and be um, relevant in the finals, even just to get to the finals and then get 4-0 or 4-1 to like it's like okay you got that far just to get shut out like that. Um, which it's a grueling season playing best of seven series throughout the playoffs. You're just playing a lot of games within a month of time. So, um, but yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about the Bucks there.
Yeah, hopefully, I mean, all the Bucks fans around, hopefully they can make a run this year. We've kind of had a 3 to 5 year window, probably about 3 years ago, and so their run's kind of coming to an end here. Guys are getting old. People are gonna have to start moving because they're making a lot of money. Um, it's just an unfortunate thing with a smaller franchise like the Bucks.
Hmm.
Um, you can't keep everybody that you'd like to.
Yeah. And I mean, just the city of Milwaukee in general, it's very similar to Portland. It's a small market franchise where um, even like on the baseball side, the Brewers, they have an amazing guy come in, and then another team says we'll pay you this much more, and then they're gone. So that's why it's nice to see for like the Brewers for them to keep Yelich and Yelich last year, because I thought for sure it's like, oh, he's going to get a bigger deal, he's going to be gone. And I can't remember if he ended up taking less money than other deals, but he ended up staying regardless.
He did. He wanted to be in Milwaukee. He likes living in Milwaukee, and that's another thing with baseball is teams can buy their teams. Like the Dodgers have got a who knows how many years they're going to be a contender for the World Series. Like they are so good with the team that they built because they got the cash to do it. And yeah, it's nice to see guys saying, "Hey, I already make enough money doing what I'm doing. I'll continue to make good money, and I like it here."
Hmm. And that's probably one of the upsides to living in Milwaukee is you're you're not taxed as much as an athlete as opposed to living in like Florida or California. Living all that this and that. If you can deal with the cold, it's not a bad place to live.
And the media is not as intense in a smaller city like Milwaukee, Green Bay, as like it would be in Los Angeles, Chicago, or some of these other bigger cities where you can kind of get away for have your private time.
Hmm. And like as far as like Green Bay with like the Packers, there's a lot of players that just go out to like local like they just live their life like a normal person because it's a smaller city. They can do that where in bigger cities like Chicago or LA or New York, it's a lot more people, so it's more dangerous as far as like crime and stuff like that. And then um, media and like paparazzi following you around. You don't get the privacy that you do in like some of these other smaller franchises.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just kind of one more note with the MLB. Opening day is just around the corner, only a week away. So we haven't really talked about baseball too much in the first couple episodes, mostly because it's just in spring training right now. It's kind spring training is a lot like watching an NFL preseason. You could watch a team go 4-0 in the preseason. Like I think back in the early 2000s, um, like the Lions. I think they went 4-0 in the preseason, and then they went 0-16 in the regular season. So it's like um, watching spring training, it just gives everybody a glimpse. It obviously gives them a chance. These teams, it's more as a chance to set their rosters and figure out who they're going to keep, who they're going to cut, who they're going to drop back down to AAA, who's going to move around and stuff like that. So obviously, it's nice for baseball to be back soon. But yeah, as the season kind of goes on, and especially with how long the baseball season is, early on, there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about. It's really going to be kind of like the NBA. Once you get past the All Star break, then you kind of see who's hot and who's making a good push, who's getting cold, stuff like that. So, We probably won't touch on baseball a whole lot, but we will get to that point eventually once the season gets underway.
Yeah, one more quick thing about baseball, actually. Chicago White Sox left fielder Eloy Jimenez looks like he's going to be out 5 to 6 months. The slugger for the White Sox. He ruptured his pectoral tendon. So last year, he hit 296, 14 homers, 41 RBIs during the shortened season there. So that's pretty good for the 24-year-old kid. And hope he makes a good recovery, and hopefully he can make it back here and have an impact for the Sox.
Yeah, um, yeah, that sucks. Get any sport where you're out for basically the entire season before it even gets going like that. Um,
Yeah,
Especially
that's
Jimenez. He's a good player.
that's what the pandemic did, though, man. So many of these players finally got to relax and rest and recover for the first time, and then you're going right back into it full bore. And a lot of these guys, look at the last NFL season, how many non-contact injuries happened that were season end? A lot, because of these
Hmm.
guys weren't in the shape of doing it year round and on that schedule that they normally were on. So yeah, hope he makes a great recovery, and that's for any athlete that's dealing with an injury. Always like to see him getting back and getting back to how they used to play, and seeing people have that second success.
Hmm. And just kind of sticking with like the with COVID having an impact on injuries and stuff. It goes to show too how um, the motivation and self discipline comes into play there. Because there's as much as there's been a lot of injuries uh, due to again a lot of rest and not getting their regular workout programs in. There's still a lot of players that are having like haven't missed a beat and they're still playing really well. And that just goes to show their self discipline. They're doing stuff probably at home in their garages or they have like in a weight room at home or whatever it might be. Um, they realize, hey, I can't go into the facility and practice because it's closed, or I can't get extra reps in with some of my teammates. Um, so the guys that are still thriving and doing really well, I mean, it can be done.
Yeah, it definitely can be done here. Let's switch over to the NFL here. How about Mike McCarthy coming out and saying Dak Prescott? He's like a huge key, and he's so excited to have him back, and he's the keystone of the Cowboys. How much do you actually think McCarthy's blowing smoke here? How much do you think he actually is telling the truth?
I mean, kind of just as a us being Packer fans, we obviously are very familiar with Mike McCarthy. He was the Packers coach for probably about a decade. I don't know exactly the number of years, but it was probably close to a decade. Um, but he was kind of a he was kind of an emotionless guy from what I remember. He didn't really like get too excited about the team. So I don't. It's kind of hard to tell early on, especially with this only being his second year as coach of Dallas, and his first year is kind of a shitstorm. I feel like whether you're a first year coach in that situation or you're Bill Belichick, I mean, even look at Bill Belichick. He had changes happen. Some say he could be one of the greatest coaches of all time, but he struggled because he lost essentially one player. So it goes to show that when you get used to something for such a long time, whether it's the system, whether it's your players, um, your management, your coaches underneath you, whatever it might be, it takes a couple years to get used to it. But then on the flip side as well, sticking with the conversation of Green Bay, LaFleur, amazing first 2 years, back-to-back NFC Championship appearances.
Both
Uh,
L's.
yeah, both L's, but um, yeah. So there's obviously two sides to the coin. It might take some coaches a little bit to adjust and get used to their new team, and some just step in and it looks natural. So yeah, just kind of, or I guess get back to your question about Dak Prescott. Um, I mean, I feel like he's almost obligated to say that just because of the fact that they just paid him freaking so much money. He's getting 75, I think 75 million just in his first year, averaging 40 million a year after that. Um, so obviously, just for media's sake, he's obviously going to talk highly of his quarterback. Um, that he just paid a shit ton of money for. Because otherwise, if he doesn't, then it's like, okay, why'd you pay this guy millions? Um, but I mean, he has a reason to be excited. Prescott, he has the talent and knowledge to be a top 5 quarterback, but he just, whether it's the weapons, the scheme he's in, staying healthy, or a combination of all of that, he just hasn't put together really what looks like a full season that we can say, okay, he's the real deal. Um, you see glimpses of him where it's just like, wow, he's a good quarterback. He's like, he's mobile. He's kind of he's like the step right before the guys you see today, like your Kyler Murray, your Baker Mayfield. Dak Prescott is like a little bit closer to your older style quarterback. Still mobile, but not completely all there like some of the newer quarterbacks are. So, yeah, I mean, as much as everybody rips on the Dallas Cowboys, including myself, just because they're America's team, even though they haven't won a playoff game in 2 decades. Um, yeah, all that aside, it's nice to see individual players have success when they've been struggling. So it'll be interesting to see the Cowboys this year, how they do, especially being in the NFC East, which has kind of been a laughing stock the last couple of years. If Dallas comes out and does what they should do, they should win that division, no problem.
Oh yeah. And then also flipping over to another thing that's pretty cool and incredible is Patrick Mahomes partnering with the HBCU Legacy Bowl, which will begin playing next year in New Orleans through his 15 and Mahomes Foundation. He's gotten together and set up it's a week-long celebration of Black culture and history, and the top 100 HBCU players will be invited. The NFL Network will broadcast the game. The league is also a major partner in the game, as are Tulane and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This game will take place the Saturday after the Super Bowl next February at Yeoman Stadium in Tulane University. So shout out to Patty Mahomes. That's incredible for what he's doing off the field with that $500 million that he got. Um, yeah, good for him. It's nice to see people doing good things with all that money that they're getting. So shout out to you, Patty Mahomes.
hmm It's always good to see younger guys doing it too, because he's only a few years into the league, where I feel like a lot of these guys, and understandably so, where they kind of come from low income households or just a lower income period than what they're at now, being a professional athlete. It can be difficult for some of them to keep their head on straight, spend their money on the right things, invest it, give it or give back to charity, give back to their communities, stuff like that. Um, yeah, it seems like every a couple times a year, Mahomes' name keeps coming up as far as um, giving back to certain organizations. Now the historically black colleges and universities, kind of that movement. It's kind of on the topic of that as well. It's awesome to see uh, Deion Sanders take Jackson State's football program and turn that around.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, they're still undefeated this year, and they look really good. So, um, always good to see again, an example of a young NFL player and Patrick Mahomes giving back, and then retired and Deion Sanders both, um, again, going back to their communities and helping lift up these younger athletes that need the help.
Yeah, and speaking on community, something that affects everyone is this COVID-19 pandemic that we are going through. NFL has some news on what they are going to do going forward on that. The NFL has no intentions, they said, to require COVID vaccinations for players, coaches, or team staff members. That's according to the league's chief medical officer. Um, Also, on the NFL Network, Dr. Allen Stills said he hopes everybody should get vaccinated, and he said you'll see vaccinated individuals be able to have certain privileges and certain precautions that are lifted and won't apply to unvaccinated individuals. So, can you see what do you kind of think? Do you think the players are going to do it? You think they're not going to do it? How do you think this whole thing's going to work out? Yeah, just what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, it's obviously a good push for the organization itself. I know the NBA's kind of done the same thing where there's been ex NBA players that are pushing, hey, get your vaccine, whether it's targeted at current NBA players or just the world as a whole. Um, Obviously, like these organizations like the NFL and the NBA are big role models for the sports world and especially young people, people, I mean, younger than us even, who are um, maybe not as educated with the whole COVID thing as us, where some kids are still. And I mean, I'd even be the same way. Like, I'm glad I'm not having to go through high school, living through a pandemic of a couple days in school, a couple days online, back and forth. Oh, sports season, boom, it's done just like that because one thing happened. Um, Luckily, I got to get to the other side of high school before that happened. But but yeah, I feel like this is more or less just about kind of making sure everybody's educated and has the facts as far as what the vaccine's for, um, and the ultimate goal of it. Again, like we talked about yesterday, of getting to that 51% of vaccinations throughout the country and throughout the world. It's just again another platform for these health officials to work with to try to have an influence on people. And obviously, the sports world is a very large, probably one of the largest communities aside from like, I mean, of anything throughout the world. So obviously, that's a good place to start for them to work to get people vaccinated and stuff like that. um, I could see some players going through with it. Obviously, some players aren't, just because I mean, there's thousands of players in the league, so not everybody's going to think the same way, whether they're pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine. Some people shelter themselves in their homes and they're like for like staying safe with COVID, and some are just like, I want to live my life. You have a big melting pot of all those different kinds of people throughout the world, and especially in the sport, for these athletes. So I feel like you're going to have a decent amount. I'm glad that they're not making it uh, required, just encouraged. Um, just as the NFL, kind of like you made a joke yesterday, the NFL is almost its own little government, where
Yeah.
they they're able to do stuff where the government says, "Oh, you guys can't do this, you can't do that," and then the NFL just slides a couple stacks under the table and like, we're going to do it anyway, and the government's like, "Okay." So,
Yep.
um, it's nice to see that the NFL isn't playing God and saying, "Oh, you're getting vaccinated, otherwise you're not playing anymore." I'm glad they're not doing anything like that, as they shouldn't, because they're not a government, even though they kind of act as one. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be a good mix of those who do and don't. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the kind of the off season plays out, and going into next season, if we'll get back to full stadiums. I know briefly talked about like Texas Rangers. They plan to have 40,000 people, and then like in Jacksonville in a couple weeks, UFC plans to fill um, was it TSA Bank Stadium where the Jags play for UFC main card. Um, so yeah, we're kind of at that point where there's still going to be cases that happen. There's going to be spikes that happen. There's it's that you're dealing with billions of people in the world, but um, yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about that.
So then, what do you just real quick? What do you think that's going to cause any rifts on the teams? Like, say the majority gets vaccinated, and there's a few that don't, and then all of a sudden, COVID protocol, guys got to miss games, stuff like that. Do you think people are going to kind of point the finger at each other, or do you? And then, as far as that goes as well, do you think the amount of fans allowed in the stands is going to be determined by on if players, coaches, team officials, all stadium workers, if they're all vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're talking like as far as like if COVID protocol were to happen to a team and it's like I'm vaccinated, yeah, I'm vaccinated too, and then it goes, it's like, but at the same time, like getting into like the laws of the country, like with like HIPAA laws, you shouldn't have to say, oh yeah, I'm vaccinated or no, I'm not, because it's personal health information. Obviously, it's like,
But that's the NFL's government that
yeah,
I'm talking about. Is they know
yeah,
and they
well,
have control over that.
yeah, but I guess the like even though there might be pointing of fingers in like a locker room as far as like, oh, who did it, it's going to be easy to tell if like 80% of your team is vaccinated and somebody gets it. Okay, he didn't get vaccinated because then like if you get vaccinated, you should be good. You shouldn't contract it anymore.
Is that what they're saying? If you
I
do
mean,
get it,
eventually. I mean, there might, especially with like the like Mandy, she got one a couple weeks ago, and then on this Friday she goes to get her second, and then
yeah,
she'll be good to go after that.
what I heard is that they're starting to administer new rounds of boosters because it wears off like 180 days or whatever. So is that going to be a thing where people are just you're going to have to get a shot every 180 days and keep boosted or like for forever because you got it in the first place? The whole thing is still kind of a
Yeah.
big question mark on really what's going on as it's been this long and not one person's came out and said, yes, this is what it is. This is how we're going to stop it. This is what, you know what I mean? And all of the
Hmm.
league, and especially that affects the sports world, which what we talk about every day is they all got put on hold, like they didn't know if how much how long they weren't going to be able to play, all these other types, and then they have to rush to make all of their own little protocols while abiding by all these different state laws, and it just made everything so complicated when you kind of just wish that someone just steps forward and just this is what it is. This is going to be how we're going to approach it, and boom. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
that's also. I mean, it's hard to do that just because you have to get millions of people on board to think the
no,
exact same way.
I'm just talking within the sports world. Like, just get everybody on the same page. Like, you're
Yeah.
all on the same team. You all are playing for the same reason. Y'all more like more likely have more things in common than not. So you guys love each other. You're a family. That type of thing. So it's like you guys should all be able to get on the same page, whether there's some bargaining involved about what's got to happen to make that happen. Like if some guy doesn't want to get the vaccine, okay, let's give him an extra little bit of chunk of money to get him to do it so that we can make sure this whole league is safe and sound. I was talking about that aspect, not like within the country, because
Oh, okay.
that'd just be way too ridiculous to make that happen.
Yeah. You know, it's there's definitely multiple ways to approach it, and I'm glad I'm not sitting at that table, part of
Right.
that conversation to have that stress put on me. Um, I mean, the best thing to hope for is that they make the right they 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 make the best educated decision. I shouldn't say the right decision because, I mean, as we know, a little over a year ago when it first happened, all right, everybody go home for 2 weeks and we'll be good to go. We'll be gone. Here we are over a year later. So, and there's been roller coasters all in between that of this is the right way to do it. Oh, masks work, they don't work, all this and that. I mean, it's all about me. Everybody is always like, oh, they made the wrong decision. It's like, well, they made the best educated decision with what they had at that,
At the time, right.
and that might be a different
The
tomorrow.
next exactly, or even an hour later.
Yeah. So as much as it's frustrating, everybody wants to get back to their lives. I mean, it's not an easy thing to go through, but yeah. Let's see what else you got here for kind of what's
Yeah.
new.
I didn't really have anything else for the NFL. It's been kind of a quiet
Yeah, aside from kind of the NBA trade stuff, that's kind of the main.
thing going on here today. Yeah. Yeah, that's really it. You got opening day, or you got some spring training baseball going. There is some European under 21 championship soccer going on.
Oh, as of 3 o'clock, so a half hour ago, New Orleans Pelicans trading JJ Redick to the Mavericks. Um,
So that's something that just came through.
yep.
That's that's some big news.
Yeah,
After they decided to keep Lonzo and not ship him up to Chicago like the talk was.
mhm.
It's interesting to see that they moved Reddick.
Yeah, I mean he's a seasoned vet. He's been on probably is like he's kind of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick where he's on like his eighth team now, whatever it might be. Um, but I mean he shows up and he delivers. So I mean he's still playing for a reason. Um, and Dallas is kind of one of those markets again that's up and coming too with Luka Doncic. Um, uh, Even like Porzingis, he came over from the Knicks. Um, yeah, now they got Redick, so um, obviously good for the Mavericks, and then whatever the Pelicans got out of it, I'm not sure. Doesn't show what the Pelicans got out of the deal, but
Oh, it doesn't say.
no, it just says they traded him to it, um, avoiding a possible buyout situation for the veterans shooting guard. Oh, so sent Reddick to and oh they sent Reddick and Nicolo Melli to Dallas for forwards James Johnson and Wes Iwundu, as well as a 2021 second round pick. Um, so yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot to. I mean, like I said, the NBA trade deadline was kind of our main topic for today. Obviously, every episode is going to be different. With it, it's all depending on the sports world. There could be 5 minutes of stuff to talk about, and then there could be 2 hours of stuff to talk about. So, um, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add for today before we kind of wrap things up.
Oh yeah. Just some quick hockey talk here. Um, just a quick rundown of what kind of went on last night throughout the league. You had the San Jose Sharks. They downed the Kings 4-2. That was a pretty good game. I did catch a little bit of that on NBCSN last night. That was a hard fought game. Always a good battle when you got the teams inside the state of California battling it out. Um, then you head up north and you had the Ottawa Senators. They beat the Calgary Flames 3-1. Um, always, again, always nice to see two Canadian teams going at each other. They eat, breathe, sleep hockey up there, and it's just awesome to see them going at it right on live on the television screen. Then Sidney Crosby and the Pens, they downed the Buffalo Sabres 5-2. Crosby had 1 goal and an assist in the game. Dude's just unreal, and he keeps doing it year after year. I don't know how he does it. Um, the Minnesota Wild beat the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Well, not the Mighty Ducks anymore, but the Ducks now, 3-2. That was a close game. Caught a little bit of that on FS Wisconsin too. Just caught the very end of the game, so I didn't get to see too much of that. And then the Winnipeg Jets beat the Vancouver Canucks, and some kid named A Cop netted 4 goals last night. 4 goals, and that was pretty impressive to see. Most of those coming on the power play. He did have an empty netter in there as well, and then that COVID, as we mentioned earlier, with how it's holding stuff up around all of the sports world. The Oilers and Canadiens game was postponed as there are still some teams dealing with COVID right now, and hopefully they can get that all together here so the season can kind of end where they're planning it. And I know Boston just had a huge they're like 6 games behind. The Flyers, they were behind early in the year.
Caps wrote for a bit.
There's like there's quite a few waves of this COVID that has hit the NHL. So just hoping that they can make it through the season healthy, and hopefully that they can get to the playoffs where hopefully they set up those bubbles again, and we can see some great hockey and battling it out for Lord Stanley.
Yes, sir. All right.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I had. No Deshaun Watson news. Seems like that is getting quieter and quieter
Yeah, for the
every day now because there was an ex-teammate of Deshaun Watson that came out and spoke that had said that no matter if he's found guilty or not, that his name and his reputation is already destroyed. So he doesn't see anything good working out in this situation for Deshaun. Um, the longer this goes on, it kind of seems like, what's the holdup, dude? Like, if you got nothing to hide, shouldn't this kind of be over with already? You know what I mean?
yeah, but also when you have
But
16 lawsuits you're dealing with at
that's a
any
lot.
time.
Exactly. That's a lot to handle, and your lawyer's probably very, very busy. So,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess in an up note for him, it has gotten quieter yesterday and today. Um, so either the lawsuits are being dealt with, they're being disregarded, he's paying them out, whatever it is. Um, like again, as more news comes out about it, we'll make sure to talk about it. But I guess for the moment, it's looking like it's finally tipping back to Sean's way a little bit. Because in this case, silence is a good thing. So
well, yeah, and like we talked about, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, on how these are just civil suits still, and the cops are not involved in any way, that type of thing. So no one really is going to find out all of the information because of the fact these are probably private civil suit matters. So no one will ever really probably ever get to know what happened if you don't hear anything, and everything just kind of moves forward. Um, but yeah, I mean, as great of a quarterback and as good of a person that he seems on TV and what you've heard about him through the years that he's been playing football, uh, you hope that it's not true, but if it is, let justice be served.
yeah. Um, just taking a quick scan before, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I bet later today, more of those NBA trades that were agreed upon are going to start coming through. So I bet there'll be a few more probably to talk about tomorrow. Um, but yeah, other than that, I don't know. Is there a golf tournament this weekend?
I'd imagine so.
I know a lot of the top dogs are kind of getting ready for the Masters.
Yeah, round one in progress. The Corrales Punta Cana Resort and Club Championship. Oh, this is like a head-to-head tournament, though.
Gotcha. I was gonna say I wasn't seeing any big main tournaments coming up here because you got the Masters and then you got the PGA Championship there in May.
Oh, I get that's interesting. Through 15 today. Homa is up on Morikawa by one.
Oh no way, Morikawa's struggling.
Um, yeah, we'll touch on
Kid's a
that one.
stud though. Kid's a
Yeah,
stud though. He's so young. He's gonna make so much money. It's ridiculous.
yeah, we'll recap that once that tournament's done on Sunday. We'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, if we got anything else, let's pack it up, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good. See you tomorrow.
All right, see you tomorrow.